Once Jane Seymour married Henry VIII, she may have expected that he would want to return England to Rome, wanted to reunite the Catholic Church with its Roman counterpart, return to Roman Catholicism, and many of the others people in court likely expected and hoped for the same. However, while Henry wasn't interested in reform, and he did like Catholicism, he didn't like the Pope, and he still hadn't really forgiven him for, messing up his divorce plans over the last few years. So there's no hope there from Henry. Now, the dissolution of the monasteries, the shutting down of the monasteries and the abbeys, has been, the reason for that happening has been something that's been debated by historians for years and years. And the arguments are usually financial reasons, political reasons, or religious reasons. And I think we have to come to the point where we accept that it's going to be a bit of all of those. But whatever the reason, Jane was very upset by these closures. She felt that quite deeply. And she wasn't the only one. In October of 1536, we see 20 rebels, although they would refer to themselves as faithful subjects of the king, rise in rebellion against the fact that jewels were going to be taken from their local church. By the 6th of October, there's now 40,000 of them at Lincoln, and they are using the 5 wounds of Christ as their banner. Just to backtrack slightly a couple of days, on the 4th of October, Henry has decided that he's going to go and meet these rebels himself with a big, team, obviously. He's not going to go on his own. He's going to take a bunch of lads and they're going to go and meet these rebels and sort them out. And he decides that in his stead, he's going to leave Jane as regent with her own little team. Now, he's not leaving the country, but he is going a fair few hours away. He's going quite a distance. So he decides he's going to leave Jane as regent with some, with a pretty decent team behind her. He's going to leave the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Lord Chancellor, the Earls of Essex and Rutland and Oxford, and various noblemen to attend on her and help her rule while he's off sorting out the rebels. So this must have been a really big moment for Jane, and quite a confusing one, because she was worried about him being at a greater distance from her. She worried that if she wasn't in his close proximity, she might lose any sort of hold she had on him. And we know how scary this marriage must have been. But at the same time, she's gone in really a matter of months from somebody invisible to potentially being the regent of the country. So really huge honour. However, as the rebels grow in number, Henry decides probably safer for him to just hunker down at home. So Jane never gets that opportunity, but really interesting, I think, that he was prepared to put that trust in her. It's likely that Jane actually agreed with many of the statements that the rebels were making. Stop suppressing our monasteries. Let us keep our ancient practices in our churches. Please excuse my dog barking. Henry clearly didn't agree with anything the rebels wanted, however, and when it was clear he wasn't going to in any way listen to their demands, they dispersed. However, a bigger uprising replaced it. Now, this bigger rising, the Yorkshire Rebellion, was frightening. Henry had the Tower of London, its defences enhanced, and he called Mary and Elizabeth to court to be placed under Jane's care. Jane believed that these uprisings were a sign of God's displeasure at the closing of the monasteries. So this is when we see her make her one and only act of defiance and dallying into politics, when she throws herself on her knees in front of the king, in front of the court, begging the king to put a stop to what he's doing to the churches and the abbeys and the monasteries, because it's clearly against God's will. judging by what's happening out there. Henry was pretty cross, as I'm sure you can imagine, even though a lot of the court probably agreed with her. But he needed to save face, and he made sure to remind her exactly what happens to wives who meddle and talk out of turn. By the 14th of October, the whole of Yorkshire was up in arms, but by the 28th, they had agreed a truce, and Henry begrudgingly signed a pardon for everybody. Do we think he's going to keep his word? Let's see. He does talk a good talk, though. He charms one of the leaders, Robert Aske. Even, he has him to dinner, and he says to him, Jane will come to York for her coronation. So it's really believed that Henry is going to be as good as his word. However, not much later, he repudiates on this pardon. He has some rebels and some leaders gathered up and has them executed. One of the prisoners even writes to Jane, really sure of her support, begging to help spare his life, but she wasn't going to speak up anymore. Thank you so much for watching. You would absolutely make my day if you could like this video and subscribe to me for more Tudor videos. And don't forget, you can find exclusive content at patreon.com/Tudor Tales. You can also find me on TikTok at Tudor.tales. And if you want to have a little glimpse at my PhD research, I'm on Instagram, the.Tudor.tales. I will see you for more Jane Seymour tomorrow.